Hey, you're watching Fat Man, you dingus. Whatever he said.
Yo, this is your boy Fat Man. We're back again, and it seems that Steve Ditko's family is angry by what this YouTuber has created and the information that's out there. Listen, I've heard there was beef with like Marvel, Steve Ditko, and Jack Kirby. There was beef with like their families had beef with the properties that these characters have, these artists created, and these artists own these properties. I believe Jack Kirby being mad at Stan Lee and Stan Lee's documentary is completely different. Like, I get it, but I don't know, man. I feel like there's so much going on there. What I do remember and what I do know, the information that's out there is Stan was the face of Marvel because the artist didn't want to step in front and kind of show face for the public on what the fuck they're doing. Because honestly, what the fuck are you guys doing? Nigga, we doing everything. What are you talking about? We're creating magic here for kids and grown-ups to enjoy. And I do feel comics are everyone's facet. Like, I think there's a comic book out there for everybody. You know what I'm saying? No matter what age you are, there's a book out there for you. Shit. If you tell me a 12-year-old is reading Tolkien, Lord of the Rings, and they're reading The Sandman, I'm over here like, well, shit, this kid's got fucking good taste, and they read all of Harry Potter. So, off the cuff, I'm telling you right the fuck now, artists and what people read, I feel like books are for everybody. Depending on comic books is also for everyone. It's a niche. It's an energy. You know, it's just right, baby. It's just right. But from what I'm looking at here, it seems that Jack Kirby's family is pissed. And listen, to me, I feel like if you're gonna be mad, you should have been mad at Stan when he was alive, because now the man's gone. The only person left from Stan's entire like life is his daughter JC, and there's nothing coming out of her that's gonna be relevant or caring about it. She's gonna be, I guess, making residuals off of him and Marvel for some time to come, probably, depending on how Stan's contracts were, lawyers and stuff like that, and his estate personally, because she's gonna be eating for a while. Now, I believe Jack Kirby's families are mad because they're not getting any royalties from this artwork. That's different. But let's get into the video.
A statement from Jack Kirby's son, which was posted to Twitter by Jack Kirby's granddaughter, has really put a big damper on the recently released Stan Lee documentary on Disney+. The statement from Kirby's son basically calls Stan Lee an egotistical prick, and he's pissed at the fact that the documentary doesn't give his father, Jack Kirby, and others any credit for building Marvel into what it is today.
It was a partnership. He does go to give you guys credit, but that might be a partnership. And this documentary is through his eyes. I believe that's a pot shot to be like, fuck this guy, but in itself it's not fair because you're taking it out on a dead man and his legacy and what he put together with the group of these artists. Don't get me wrong. And if I hire somebody to draw something and I give them every detail of what I need, but the powers and everything else I'm kind of like slow up to keep, it doesn't mean they own the fucking shit. I still went through every single thing. Like, come on, bros. Like, yeah, Stan Lee did give credit to them when they were alive. He was like, nah, like, if it wasn't for Jack and Steve, I wouldn't really be here because these artists were incredible and he really loved and fucked with those artists. He promoted those artists. He was like, these guys are the best. They put out all the best work and all the best styles of energy, and they really are top tier. I think the only ones that I believe are artists and writers 100% would be the guys that made Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Kevin Eastman and was it not Phil Lord, Kevin Eastman, and their names would be right here. But those guys are artists that created a billion-dollar industry off of their backs, and they succeeded. So not everybody's gonna be a Kevin Eastman and Phil Lord. Damn it, I keep forgetting his name. So true. Let's continue.
So who does deserve the credit? Let's talk about it. Most, if not all of the credit goes to Stan Lee for creating a lot of the characters that we know and love in today's day and age, including Spider-Man, the Hulk, the Fantastic Four, the Avengers, X-Men, you get the idea. From face value, it seems like Stan Lee was the main creator of Marvel and pretty much everything that had to do with it, as he was the face of Marvel ever since its young days in the comic game, all the way up until his recent death and in the basically huge entertainment industry. But there's been a huge beef in actually who has created all of these characters even since the early days of Marvel, as many of the illustrators and artists had a hand in creating these characters. Probably one of the biggest illustrators and artists, Jack the King Kirby, who definitely had a big hand in helping to create a lot of these characters. Now, Jack Kirby was the sole creator of Silver Surfer, but doesn't get his due credit for his helping into create the Fantastic Four, the Avengers, X-Men, and so forth. There's also Steve Ditko, who we really don't hear a lot about, who actually helped to create probably one of the most famous superheroes of all time, and that is Spider-Man. So if we go back to the recent statement released from Jack Kirby's son, it makes it sound like Stan Lee was a bumbling buffoon who got credit for creating all of these characters at Marvel because he was put on a pedestal by Marvel and he was the one promoting Marvel Comics.
Yeah, that's he was a promoter. He had to be the one to do it because the rest of y'all motherfuckers wasn't doing it. You wasn't taking initiative, and I'm sorry. What's the old term, and it's still used to this day? Like one door closes, another one opens up. It's opportunity. He saw it, he seized it, and that was the fucking plan. Stan was a go-getter, and he's from the Bronx. That's where I'm from. He was born and raised here, and he came out of that to be the biggest there is at doing it. So, and even besides the rappers that came out of here, Stan Lee did what he had to do. Now, don't get me wrong. An opportunity strikes, you seize the motherfucking day. Like that. I don't give a rat's fucking ass what you feel. Oh, well, he was promoted because of blah, blah, blah. He was promoted because they needed someone that was entertaining, that had charisma, and that could talk the gab. And Stan was their man. He can talk the talk, walk the walk, and he knows what he's talking about. And especially when it comes to these characters and how fantastical he is at making them seem larger than life. But he's also a man that added a human level to these characters. And not to lie to you, that's important because all these characters with their fantastical powers had to be relatable to the people reading the comics, to the kids reading the comics, to the adults reading the comics. These characters on a human level, Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, Daredevil, the Avengers themselves, the problems they go through, so on and so forth, had to be on some human level. Stan was the guy to take the X-Men and put them on that type of level. It's just what it is. That's how the game goes. I don't know what you want.
First, I don't think it's fair to say that Lee is an idiot or a bumbling buffoon based on what the statement sounds like from the sheer fact that obviously Lee helped to create some of these characters, and yes, he was the face of Marvel and he helped to build it into what it is today. First off, I think Jack Kirby's son needs to peel it back a second because the first paragraph and a half of his statement is basically ridiculing a documentary about Stan Lee being about Stan Lee, essentially. Like, what do you expect? They're not going to go into full detail about Jack Kirby and other people because the documentary's not about them.
It's not. And if they do any other documentaries on the artists of Marvel, they're gonna go through Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko. They're gonna go through all these fucking artists that are the main reason Marvel is still around. And also, they did Stan. So if they want to go through the artists of Marvel, they fucking will. They'll go through the greats. They'll go through those who have put in time and effort. Let's stop playing these games. Let's stop.
It's about Stan Lee. And he gets mad at the fact that it's basically talking about Stan Lee and it's all from his viewpoint. And that's just the way that the directors decided to make this documentary, were all clips and put them together from interviews that Stan Lee had done in the past. I don't necessarily agree that it was the best documentary. I was expecting a little bit more, but you can't get mad at a fact that it's all about Stan Lee and he uses words like I and me because he's the one talking about himself. And it's a documentary about himself from interviews collected from Stan Lee. Now, in the documentary,
that's how it is. Like, you can't be mad at that. And if you want to be mad, I get it. But still, this is his documentary. Has a point. It's like, listen, they're not talking about everybody else. They're talking about just Stan, and that's kind of it. Everybody else is a footnote in his story because remember, what's the old classic saying? It's not it's history or it's his story because you're telling it from one person's point of view, but history is played out through many different points of view. Many different people were there and they're all fucking dead now, and somebody wrote the books, somebody wrote the information, somebody kept the journal, and that's how it goes because it was kept. It was written.
Documentary, Lee does go on to say that because he thought that he had the idea of a character that may not have been fully fleshed out, that it was originally his IP and that he was the creator of the character, even though it wasn't fully thought out, and then eventually got help from maybe some of these artists and other people who helped, draw this character. It even goes into the documentary.
That's a problem that I feel that even I've had when it comes to I have all these ideas of a character, I have their clothes, I have articles of their clothing, I have every detail of their clothing, I have every aspect of a character in my head, but I need someone to put it on paper. But now somebody's gonna be like, oh well, this artist owns that. And I'm like, no the fuck they don't. I bought it, I paid for it, it's mine. They were hired to do a job. That's what commissions and shit are for. And some people will be like, oh, but they own it. I'm like, they don't own the character. I own the character. I created the character. The character came out of my mind. The artist couldn't put shit to fucking pen to fucking paper if it wasn't for my thoughts. Like, let's be fucking honest here. If it wasn't for me just thinking about every fucking aspect and detail of this character, honey boo boo lemon drop sugar plum dumpling, you wouldn't have it. So the artist doesn't own shit. Because I remember at one time I showed somebody something that was like, I love this, I want this on my wall, I want this, I want this. And I was like, okay, cool, I'll talk to somebody. But then when time kind of moves forward, you kind of have to be like, well, okay, well, this is my art. Well, okay, well, who drew it? Who painted it? I was like, the fuck? Nobody. This is mine. This is my shit. Nobody owns this but me. And that's the problem when people look towards the artist because they need somebody to recreate that. And it's like, no, this IP's been bought. This is my IP. There's a whole problem with that right there. That if you hire somebody to do something, people think that person owns it. It's the same way I feel like conventions is when you're selling art that's already created or you're painting and creating. If you're drawing something up and already creating what's out there, cool. As long as you know you don't own that art, and that art, yeah, you can create and make whatever you want, but you don't own that character. It's already owned by a conglomerate and a company. You're just doing a little design for somebody or whatever the fuck. That's fine. I'm okay with that. Personally, shalala boom. But there's reasons that shit just kind of happens. When people are like, well, do you own anything? Like, because original artists that come out there, original artists, original stuff that's out there, if it's been claimed, copyright, and all that shit, then fine. But I think Stan was like, I got something, I need help, and he runs through every aspect of the character, and the artists draw it up. Like Steve Ditko did not first think of Spider-Man the way he looks now. There had to be maybe five sketches, 6 sketches, 10 sketches of what Spider-Man looked like before, and then Steve Ditko took some inspiration from his life. He took the character and thought of himself, because when you look at earlier comics, Spider-Man is younger Steve Ditko. He truly is, and that is the aspiration and kind of thought into it. Like, wow, Steve Ditko kind of took inspiration off of his younger years of a character, of a nerd, an outcast by society, and then took that nerd, that outcast, and made him a legend to go forward in time with. And it's beautiful. Let's continue.
And talks about kind of quote unquote the Marvel process, where Stan would give the artists a basic plot line and they would just go ahead and draw out a story. And sometimes they would put in the margins what was going on or what their thoughts were to maybe help move the plot line and the story along. And then Stan would get those drawings back and then draw the bubbles and write out the lines from each character, basically then creating the story. Again, you can argue that because it was originally Stan Lee's idea for creating a character such as maybe say Spider-Man, but if he didn't have it fully fleshed out and he got help from other people, in this case Steve Ditko, is it all his creation or did they co-create Spider-Man? Then you could argue that, okay, Steve maybe helped.
They co-created. Like, it was Stan's idea and Steve Ditko did the art. So co-creator Stan Lee, artist Steve Ditko. So they basically work on it together. I feel like people are gonna say, "Well, Steve Ditko did it; he owns it." It's like that's not how that works. Stan came up with the concept. So what now? Without that concept, there wouldn't be no Spider-Man. There would just be nothing.
Helped with the plot line for some stories and then drew him, but Stan Lee is who gave him his personality and his ethos of Peter Parker and Spider-Man.
That's the point. There's a reason that we have these fucking characters with these fucking stories that made human. It's because of Stan, and I already told you.
So does he get more of the credit? At the end of the day, you could really go either way on this. I'm sure some characters, just like Jack Kirby's son had mentioned in his statement, where some artists came in, I have a great idea for a character, but then again, maybe Stan Lee helped flesh out more of that and helped with the storyline and again, their personality. So was it all just one person? It was probably somewhere in the middle. And from my research and what I've seen is that they work together really well as a team, even though they may not have necessarily enjoyed each other, but they definitely needed each other to complete and make a whole story.
It had to be a partnership. It had to be a combined effort. Regardless of how Steve Ditko felt about Stan, there had to be some creative energy there because Steve was only an artist. He was nothing else. Artist, maybe a writer, but and all that did not push you to the next level because if you were only focused as an artist, what's next?
And a whole character, but you could say that all of this is unfair because Stan Lee is still essentially the face of Marvel, of basically the main creator and the person who built Marvel to what it is this day. I would argue to say that he partly is. From what I know, Stan Lee was an employee at Marvel, where most of these artists, including Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko, were all paid as freelancers. They weren't necessarily employees. Also, from what I know, Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby and other artists didn't necessarily want to be interviewed or talk about what was going on behind the scenes and promote Marvel per se. So someone had to go ahead and do it. And guess
It was fucking Stan. If you didn't want the limelight, cool. I need to show people we're working on so we can get more backing, get more love, get more things happening. That's where the TV shows came. That's where the animation came. Like, come on, bruv.
Guess what? Stan Lee had the best damn personality and the charisma to build something huge. Now, did this feed into his ego? I'm sure it did. It probably would for most people. But someone had to go out there and promote and talk about Marvel. He's the one that, yes, did all these interviews. He went to places and did these talks, had his own little column, I think, that went out every week or month, whatever it was. Someone had to do it. Otherwise, Marvel would have never lasted. It would never exist today without someone taking the reins and being the face of Marvel. That's just how it goes. Look at how Apple is with what Steve Jobs did, but we know that Steve Jobs wasn't the only person. There was also Steve Wozniak, who was behind the scenes, and he never gets any credit.
I forgot about Steve
Jobs
Wozniak.
does get all the credit. That's the same thing that we see here. Yes, Jack Kirby was definitely a big part in bringing Marvel to what it is today, along with many other artists and other people. It's just unfortunate that they don't get the recognition that Stan Lee does. Now, is that fair? I don't think so, but I think we can all go to say that life is not fair. Again, you have an opportunity in front of you. Stan Lee is the one who seized it. Not to say that that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that that's just how it was. What I do have to say is that I know very little about Stan Lee besides what I've seen in the documentary and just know of him from other interviews and what I've read about him. Overall, I do have to say that he does seem like a very nice person. Many people wanted to be around him. Obviously very charismatic, and he has helped build something today that I thoroughly enjoy and get a smile out of almost every day. I'm sure that he's brought a lot of smiles to lots of other people. Is he the only one that should get credit for bringing Marvel into what it is today? Most likely not. I do wish that he gave probably more credit to more people where it was due, instead of just saying that it was just him that fully created things. What are your thoughts on Stan Lee and this whole creation process and giving credit where it's due? Let me know down below.
Yo, honestly, shout out to this dude. He did a very good job, regardless of his 8-minute video. He broke things down step by step. When it comes to me and the whole Marvel and Stan Lee and Steve Ditko and the rest of the artists that were there, Stan is the reason Marvel is still around. I don't give a fuck. I respect Steve Ditko. I respect Jack Kirby. I respect the artists and the art that they put out. But also, without this man, y'all would not be in the position you are in now. You would not be at the top of the walk. Your families wouldn't be fucking having to struggle with Marvel from Disney, because guess what? Y'all were hired contractors. Now, I do say one thing, and this might be kind of crazy. At some point, they had to get paid for this. They had to get their names stamped on checks. There has to be something about that. Because, yeah, you're hired as contract work, but what does it say on the paperwork when you file your taxes? Is this your full spot of employment, or is this temporary employment? Because that contract work is here today, gone tomorrow. But it seems that these guys are always drawing these characters, always putting these characters pen to paper. So for a long time, for the years that came, these characters from Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, the Avengers, Silver Surfer, Thor himself, from all of these characters out there, X-Men, you have to give it to these artists that they stood near Marvel for years, and then they had to part ways eventually. So when it comes to Steve Ditko, when it comes to Jack Kirby, when it comes to the fact that they didn't get their credit, they got their credit. Eventually they got their credit. People knew who the artists were. People knew who helped create these things. Stan's daughter, JC, came out and said, my father created all of those. She created all of those characters. Personally, she said that shit fucking crazy. But I don't think she's right about that. And Stan, if he was alive to this day and he had some sanity and he was good, he would probably say, no, I had help with those characters because Jack and Steve Ditko, they helped me. Like, without them, I would never been able to get these characters out there and get my thoughts and the things I needed to the world. So they helped me create these characters. I had a character, but I needed their help. And the fact that he got their help and the fact that they were able to go through things with him, cool. And Stan was able to flesh out superhero characters, because without Stan Lee, superheroes wouldn't be the same. They wouldn't be who they are now. You know, he even questions, like, DC. He's like, well, how does Superman fly? Like, what's Batman and Superman's intention? Like, what makes them good characters, blah, blah, blah. When it comes to Marvel, Stan Lee's the reason why they're down to earth. They're not above men. They're not gods above people. They are who they are, and they connect with so many people because they're timeless. They have no stopping point. They may die here and there, but they're always eternal in a metaphoric sense, because you could pick up any comic at any point and just dive in and then maybe go back and do the research and then bring things up, because these characters are forever. Now, Stan is the reason why Marvel is successful, and that's how it has to be, you know? For shit, give it up to Daredevil and X-Men for being the first cameos. It was supposed to be Blade, but he was cut from Blade, which is kind of stupid, I believe. I don't know why he was cut from Blade, but I didn't even know Blade was a fucking Marvel movie at that time. Nobody did, until probably the ending credits. When it comes down to it, and it just is what it is, I'm gonna let you know from one man to another and from the audience. Do you think Stan Lee stole all his credit? Do you believe that he took credit where nobody else wanted it? Do you believe that he pushed Marvel in the right direction, but he still gave credit? Let this be heard in the comments below. Everything, let it be heard in the comments below. This is your boy Fat Man. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, hit the bell icon to be notified. And from me to you, remember to never give up, never surrender, keep on grinding. Peace, and I am out. So, Excelsior. And, well, enough said. Peace.
Shit.
Gambino on drum.
Who's the last one?
You little niggas gonna stop acting like my shit ain't the grill.
Who's the last
Some of
one?
you niggas get your front teeth for grills. And I ain't talking about the contract. I
Ain't loving these fake hoes. Room smelling like 8 switches. Room service like 2K. NBA, I'm ballin', nigga. All them niggas fallin' like autumn, nigga. Talking shit, I saw them niggas. Now they daughter want a picture. Rough, ain't it? Fuck famous.
Yeah, man.
Niggas too real, got the most haters. Wrote a story, so Stephen Curry. How it feel to be golden.